rather than thinking about finding your purpose, what resonates more with me is creating your purpose, or just creating the person that you want to be. Because if you've got a creation, something you can create, it's in your control. You can do it. You can take steps towards it. One step, one foot in front of the other. It doesn't have to be this huge, big thing. Oftentimes we think about switching careers or starting a new business, we think about today and then the end point of being there. And that feels huge. There's so many points in between. All you can do is take a step.
Hi, Wade here. I have a very interesting guest today. And sometimes when I get a bio from a person and I get to talk with them in our pre-interview, I get enough information that I really feel safe to say, okay, let's just talk about you. And I don't feel this sense that I have to steer the interview. And Nick Davies is one of these people. So to give you the real quick on Nick, Nick is a master business coach at ProAdvisor Coach. He's got a 20-year background in the financial service industry, originally from London, England. He's also lived and worked in the Philippines, Florida, New York, and now lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. So he's a traveling man. Over the last 4 years, he's shifted his focus and now helps people and businesses through coaching directly. He's a mindset expert trained through Tony Robbins coaching and is also a certified health coach. And there's also an assessment he had me or shared with me that is really pretty awesome. So I'm going to not do too much. I'm going to kind of wind him up and let him go in this way and just start with, you reached out to me as, hey, Wade, I think I could be a great guest for your podcast. And there's this service we have that we both subscribe to. And a lot of times people just kind of send you random stuff. And when I saw Nick's stuff, it wasn't just a good pitch. It was like, wow, this guy really seems like he would understand what we're doing. And he's lived a lot of this. So maybe if you just start out, Nick, share a little bit about your journey as an entrepreneur, moving from the financial service industry, what you're doing, what led to that, and specifically the part that really intrigued me about having you on was your focus on life with purpose, life with passion. So thank you for coming on, if I forgot to say that. And just maybe share a little bit about what intrigued you about the work you did, what's helped with your evolution, and what's taking you where you are today.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Wade, for that lovely introduction. Thank you very much. It was very, very nice. It's a pleasure to be here for sure. And gosh, I think about my story and I think about other people's stories. And one of the things I like to share is that oftentimes our stories we don't want to share because we don't think that they're valuable. It's just my story. Who wants to hear my story? Of course, the irony is that, well, it's unique. No one is like anyone else. I mean, there's overlaps, of course. We tend to generalize, and that's helpful for us to do that. But really, people should share, and I encourage that people to do so, because everyone has a different story. There's always something to take if you're willing to look for it. And so I started to do the same thing and just share with what for me was just like, that's just me. Why would that be interesting for anyone? But then you start to think about it, it's different. And the more that you can tell your story, the more that distinctions you can make for it yourself as well. So first of all, I'd like to encourage everyone to start to tell their story and share it, and just share it in a way that's just open and honest, right? And for me, spending 20 years in the financial services industry, it just seems crazy just to even say that now. That's such a big part of my life. I fell into that straight out of high school, right? My father took me up to the city of London. We lived 30 minutes away on the tube when I was 16 years old, and said, look, we're going to get you a job. He thought a job in insurance would be good for me.
Oh, shut up.
Go figure, right? It's like,
that's my background, insurance. This is hilarious. 20 years, dad's in insurance. We've hardly even scratched the surface. This is crazy. So I try not to interrupt, but that's crazy. Dad's in insurance. That's how I got started. So yes, it's stable, it's steady. Why not?
Yeah. Well, exactly. We're gonna go up. We're just gonna knock on doors. Long story short, end up working at a stockbrokers, where I used to take the deal ticket sheet where people would scribble out deal ticket, buy X amount of shares, throw it in a tray. I'll just go and get the ticket and take it to the trader and execute a trade. And I was there and qualified to take any orders, and then I did some trading. And then I got made redundant, lost my first job before I was 20. They moved that was my first experience of outsourcing. They moved everything. And I got another job working at a bank that I was with for 13 years over 2 stints, and 3 different countries, 5 different locations. And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the energy of it. But I never really stopped to think about, where am I going? It was more like, what's the If I keep doing this year, will they pay me more money? What will my bonus be like? And all of those things are outside. I was just in the inertia of life, and not bad, not good, just was. And just that, just never having enough time or creating enough time to actually get some space to think about what it was about. And the first time I started to get a little bit of that was 2008, 2009. Busiest I've ever been work-wise, and then everything just died out because everything was going crazy. And I met with a friend of mine at Starbucks near St. Paul's Cathedral, and we just said, "Oh, is this it? Is this what it's all about? You know, should we just sack it all off? Should we just quit and just go traveling?" And we did. 10 weeks later, I quit my job. He got a sabbatical from his job. We went traveling around the world, spent 7 months, Asia, Australia, America, South America, and came back and wanted a job anywhere else that wasn't London. And I found myself living in the Philippines, moved to the Philippines. And what was really interesting here, Wade, to start to give you context around the progression was, well, what is it that really makes us happy? What do we really want in life? Because at that point, I was like, hey, I've just done all this traveling. I spent all my money, just cleared it out, didn't care less. I want to get my career back on track, whatever that means. And I want to focus on working out, focus on me. It was just me. I was a single at the time. And so all I did was work and work out. I started doing martial arts, which I'd always wanted to do. I used to do Muay Thai in the evening, go to work, lift weights in the evening. Muay Thai in the morning, lift weights in the evening. Loved it. But I was miserable. I was miserable. And I think that was my first thought of, well, people need people. You need to be around people. You need to be around others.
If you don't mind me asking, how old were you at the time when you went traveling?
When I was traveling, I was 26.
Okay. I ask because I've heard a lot of things that 26, 28, 29, depending, there's different theories of the every 7-year itch, or Saturn is in a certain place every 29 years, all sorts of stuff. But that's about when I started doing similar things. And for me, it looked like, okay, I have the house in the good neighborhood that's going to appreciate, excuse me. It's going to evolve. And literally I had everything. I was like, just add water. Where is she? And because that was kind of what I had learned, and I'd done all the things I'm supposed to do. I'm like, yeah, but I'd rather be living on the beach. And I'd rather all these different things that at least I was somewhat in touch with that I wanted different. And to same exact point, it was almost more difficult that things were good. They weren't horrible. And that's what I think some people miss out on is it's not easier, at least in my experience, when everything is going haywire or horrible, but it's easier to know you need to do something different. That's easy. When things are horrible. It's when things are like 80%, 85% good. Do I risk this? Am I ungrateful? I've got so much of that. How dare I want more? X% of the world is starving. This percent of, all these different things. So gosh, well, how dare I want more? And yet for me, it wasn't a more thing. And it sounds like with you, it was a broader thing, a different more. It wasn't that one-dimensional definition of wealth of just, well, add another zero. It was something broader, something a little more diverse or perhaps multidimensional.
Yeah, I mean, there's much resonance for me for sure when you talk about that stuff. And for me, it was, I have no idea. Like, what is it? Like, where am I going here? What is this thing all about? I don't know. And I love what you just said about risk there as well, because that what you're talking about is that dreaded comfort zone. And it's kind of like, follow this example, if you will. It's kind of like if you're going to a party and you say, look, I'm going to have 2 drinks. It's a person I want to be social with, and this is the construct that we live in. I'm going to have 2 drinks, and I'm going to enjoy it. That's it. But that's my lot. I'm having 2 drinks, and you're completely convinced of that, and your conviction is there. And then you have 2 drinks, and that person after those 2 drinks is not the same person as it was before. So your perspective is different. It doesn't matter how convinced you were in that first instance. After you've had 2 drinks, everything's different. The perspective's completely changed. And so the decisions you make from there are going to be whatever they are. They might be the same, they might be, but the perspective is significantly enough different that the outcome is likely to be different as well. I think about that the same thing with the comfort zone. When you're outside of it, whether that's the pleasure side of it or the pain side of it, you have a different perspective. Once you get into the comfort zone, it's named, it's very well named. It's comfortable. So you're there, you're like, I'm good. I'm all right. I don't even see that. Like before, I had this urgency about not wasting time. Now I'm okay. It's all right. I'm kind of happy. It's all right. I'm content. That word you said, that struck a chord with me, Wade. Content. Scariest word in the English language, right? Along with comfort.
Yeah, it's almost that sense of, people talk sometimes about people self-medicating, and let's say the person that is drinking heavily because there's a pain in their life or something of that nature, as opposed to a drink here or there, whatever it might be. But I know for me, there's this sense of, I definitely like a lot of change. And again, the mind scan was so insightful and so interesting, off of so few questions, to have so much about me that was right on. And for me, I've always struggled with coming from an insurance, financial service, secure sort of background. I have 2 or 3 financial decisions I've made in my life, and each one of them was like, boom, $75,000 lost there, boom, $100,000 lost there. And it was almost a rebellion. It's like one of those, it's like, I don't really regret too many things in life, but when it involves numbers, it's like, ooh, but I would like to just put that in a side account, still have my life be exactly the same, love my life. Can I do that? Is there a clause for that? And a lot of it was, I don't even know if as much as rebellion against myself, because what else do you rebel against when things are going well? In my case, parents raised you well, you're well taken care of, and yet looking for something more. And so much of what I'd been taught, which is fundamentally sound mathematically, of take money, put it aside, things will work out when you're 65 and you retire. I certainly never resonated with the wait till 65 to enjoy stuff. I mean, shoot, I'd still be waiting now. And certainly as the workforce has turned out, at least for a lot of us, I'm not sure worldwide, but in the United States, kind of post World War II to a while ago, we have this one generation that experienced this steadiness where for them, that was the best practice. Yes, get one good job at one good place that treats people well, and you'll retire awesomely. And yet the group that's 5 to 10 years younger than them, when they changed a couple of financial regulations and the banks and the insurance got together and they started doing all these different things, which I'm not going to talk with you to understand about the defined contribution and defined benefit and all these different things, retirement plans. All of a sudden now we have so many people that have done what they were told to do, and good soldiers, good people, however you want to word that. And yet they're not getting what they want. So having seen that, for me, and especially as an entrepreneur, so difficult to balance that sense of, okay, I want to do what I love. I want to be passionate. I need to make a living. And I've always keep coming back with something that I tell my clients very often. A lot of my clients are insurance agency owners, and I remind them, and I try not to conclude that too many things are true, but this one's pretty darn true. And I've had enough wise sages tell me the same thing, like, yes, Wade, that is true. That very often, not always, but very often, the stuff that makes good, steady money and provides the lifestyle is pretty boring. And the stuff that's really exciting might make you a lot or lose you a lot, at least a lot of time. I've learned that. My wife has since learned, said, wait, go invest all the time you want that new thing. Hold off on the money part there. But just different things where, what seemed like this sort of freedom, I'm going to go do all these different things, became more of, okay, well, now I'm kind of going back and forth between the two worlds. I'm doing what I love over here, and the money's falling over here, but I don't have the two together. And for some people, that doesn't always happen the same way. And I used to obsess over that, read a couple books, and you assume that that's the case. And now for me, it's more of kind of like what you've done, of just flowing a little bit more and trusting. And at first, when I was single, that was way easier. And then as I got married and we had children, it was a lot harder to do that. And then now I found, all those fundamentals I learned way back about keep your expenses low, live minimalistically, all those certain things, that allowed me the freedom to say, so I don't have to make as much money and I can still have the time freedom. So yeah, like when you talk about, wait, we're going to just take off for 10 weeks. That's awesome to be able to do that. A lot of people can't do that. And I don't want to lean this too much, but maybe somewhere in what you're sharing, what would you tell people who are at that stage where they can't just up and leave and say, okay, I'm ready to go travel the world. what does that person do when they're finding that, yes, it's 80% good, it's comfortable? How do they, in your experience, balance making progress without the sabotage side? Because the sabotage side sounds really good when you hear, I don't know, Richard Branson or Bill Gates talk about how they lost it all and got there. I don't know about you. I know a lot of people lost it all and still haven't gotten anywhere. So, I'm not looking to play those odds. How do you find that people can perhaps get a little bit of both without going too deep into one side?
Gosh, it has to start with honesty. It has to start with asking yourself the real questions that people just quite frankly don't ask themselves most of the time. Like most of the time, people, we spend life on the surface, and nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. As long as you can ask yourself honestly, am I really happy? Do I have everything in my life that I want? Really? Really? Or at least, am I on the path to having the things that I want? Because I love the distinction you made, because it tweaked something in me when you said it. Doing those sensible, boring things. I found when my life wasn't going the way I wanted it to go. Like on paper, it's fine. Like it's fine. It's content. We're fine. It's all right. It's good. It's good enough. Good enough is not good enough, obviously. But I found that real resistance to doing all those sensible type things. So if I'm going to work, then I'm going to go and then I'm going to spend all my money. If I have to do this, then I'm going to go and spend it. I don't care about savings. And so I found if I'm not aligned in what I'm doing, there's almost you can call it sabotage if you like, or there's just a resistance against me or doing those things that I know ultimately going to put me in a better place, because it's so painful what I'm doing. I need that access, if you like. So then
is that the person, some people say, the people that say we work hard, we party harder. Like, I hate my work. So if I'm going to do work I hate, well, then I'm going to really party hard. And then you look at the math and you say, but you're partying still harder than you're making 200,000 a year, let's say in US dollars, which is a high percent, but you're dropping 250 because I'm going to show somebody, and you're still going backwards. So you're not, is that what you mean? Kind of that concept?
Kind of that concept. Absolutely. And so it flips. As soon as you start to head towards what you really want, asking those deep, honest questions that hurt a little bit. Hey, if it hurts a little bit, good. Because it will spur you into some action, right? You disturb yourself and move forward. And that's what you want. Like, feel that pain, because in that cycle he talks about, it's working and then going out and distracting yourself from it, whatever that looks like, and not feeling enough pain to do anything about it. So you're in this cycle. But as soon as you start asking those questions, what do I really want? Where do I, if I could have anywhere I wanted it, what would that look like? And you start to move towards that. It's much easier to make those quote unquote sacrifices of doing those boring things, because it means something. You can still do it as you go through. I found myself to be much more frugal and alert and specific about the things that I'm doing now than I was before, because everything else in my life is much more aligned. So you get this odd thing, but you know what? It's a journey. And you've got to reckon, again, back to the honesty. If you're in that place where you're 70, 80%, you've dug yourself a hole. Yeah, you've got to get back to zero before you can start to build the place where you want to go. Right? If 100 is where you want to go, and you've got to be honest with yourself. Like, are you -5 right now, or are you -10, or are you -100? Be honest, right? And we talked about this a little bit yesterday, right? Be honest about where you are. Because when you know where you are, you can start to dig back to where you want to be. At least get back to zero to start digging again. And it's fine. It feels like a big deal, but got to start changing momentum to the direction you want to go in. You can have anything you want. You can have anything you want, but you've got to find what it is and start to move in that direction.
Yeah, I once heard somebody say you can have almost anything, but you can't have everything.
Right.
And there's a saying, I forgot where I heard it, but it was, it's an Eastern saying where somebody told me where one of the sayings is that when the gods want to punish someone, they give them unlimited wealth and no discernment, no judgment. And you just see this thing. Okay, so now question for you, because this is one of the things a lot of entrepreneurs, you and I talked about this a little bit in our pre-interview. The body, heart, mind, spirit is a simple way I'd say, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, kind of integrating those. Speaking stereotypically, I try not to speak stereotypically, but when there's patterns, there's patterns. Yes. These stereotypical or the labeled Western lifestyle is very intellectual focused and body focused. So mind and body. And then we've each met, I'd imagine, people that, somehow they're just tuned into their calling. Very often I think of teachers or social workers. My wife's a social worker, and they're more in tune with that emotional, and I'm going to use spiritual in the lowercase s way, not in whatever particular God a person believes in or doesn't believe in, but like what's meaningful, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, well, how do we perhaps integrate these two? But then also in the knowledge economy, there's this sense, I've just met so many people that this belief that you're going to work 67, that 80 hours gets you double the work done of 40 hours. And if we were talking to an athlete and that athlete was injured and the big game was coming up, we would tell them to rest. We wouldn't tell them to go do more things physically. And yet mentally, we seem to think, oh, well, you just put in a 5-hour energy drink and there's no loss of quality. You know, it's like saying just drink a bunch of Gatorades and all of a sudden you're going to recover, when we know that that's not the case. We know that physically there's something deeper going on. How do you bring in the health coach and just the energy levels with people when so often the last thing we want to be told is, I'll go do something? I remember Richard Branson was asked in an interview, probably multiple times, what's the best thing or the most important thing he does? He says, work out every day. And it seemed so, come on, you're a billionaire, you're holding out, you're telling me work out every day. And the days though, when I do it, now, assuming I get sleep, if I get no sleep, that doesn't help either. But so how do you bring in some of that? And how do you help people know if it's not just a low energy cycle, perhaps, or just poor habits? Because, you know, the last thing we want to do is make huge changes and then find out, oh no, I was in line, I was just overtired. How do you perhaps integrate that? Or what do you suggest with people do to kind of get a sense of whether it's habits or whether it is, okay, no, there's something like, what's that indicator that lets you know I'm not just comfortable, I'm not just, I know as a parent, sometimes there's just so many things going on. I can't get to everything. I can't get to all 4 of my needs all at once, and that's okay. But how do you make that distinction, and how do you help people perhaps check in on that so that they can still be moving forward again without having to give up everything?
Yeah, it's intentional. It's like it's being focused about what it is. And I think that's one of the most valuable things from coaching. I'm sure you agree as well, Wade. Is just having that someone there that if nothing else, if everything else is taking over your life and you feel like there's a lot going on, you've got this one time every week or every couple of weeks where you go in and just like lay it all out, like your time.
Yes.
This is where I am. Okay, hit the reset button. And sometimes what will happen is that clients go through this ebb and flow, you know, where they don't want to show up for coaching, and it's because I've heard before, like lots of times actually, I wasn't ready for coaching today, right? Or I didn't feel like I was in a good place. Or there's too much going on. They're exactly the times you need to come.
That's when you do it. Yeah,
that's when you do it, right? That's the
you were to
most
tell somebody that, look, there's this client, and I'm sure you've had some of these, I've had some of these, that has paid me hundreds to thousands of dollars. And then their session comes up and they just assume skip it, even if they're going to lose it. Now, I try not to let them lose it. I try to, you know, if something comes up, but sometimes that idea that, well, yeah, I'm so tired, like, but you, at some point you connected to something, at some point you realized this is important. So yeah, that's, and how, I think you already have an answer to this, because something just came up to me as you were saying this, is I know a lot of entrepreneurs have this, you know, there's so much of the online courses. I have online courses. This is a podcast. There's all these different things about scaling and leveraging. And yet I find that I do the best work for my clients and I get the best feedback. And I actually ultimately end up being more fulfilled when I really do connect with the person, not just, here's my framework, just follow the framework and do what I tell you. How do you bring that in? Because I get a sense from what you're doing that I guess just get a sense that you have that. How do you engage people? How do you help people get re-engaged? What do you do with that client when they say, okay, and from 2 angles, practically as a coach, as a professional, and then what advice would you give that person? So as a professional, what do you do? Because we have some coaches that listen to this. What do you do as a business person to honor your time that, hey, well, I scheduled time for this. How do you handle that? And then what do you do with the client to help perhaps still keep them on track and not abandon them if at that time they're kind of having a hard time? How do you handle that?
Yeah, it's a great question, because from a client perspective, we've always got to come back to the basics. Like people, we can get to a point in our lives where there's so much stuff going on. We've always got to bring it back. Always got to bring it back. So anytime there's a feeling of overwhelm or anxiety, it's just because we're making something bigger than it really is. We've got to bring it back to the smallest possible thing of it, right? So if we're starting from scratch, from someone who's in a place of their life where they've perhaps had a load of success and it's just too much, or they've never had any, and it's just a weird starting point. Like, where would you start? You start, okay, well, what do you want? What do you want? That's a question we don't like. Most times, if you ask someone what do they want, what do I tell you, Wade? They tell you what they don't want.
Oh yeah, I don't want this. I know I don't want this. Great.
And so it's just from that point, and we just pick one thing and move forward. And so anytime that there's okay, well, this is too much for me. I haven't got like, or it's I don't want to do this. Then it's just okay. Okay, cool. What's been going great? Cool, excellent. Let's start again. Why did you come in the first place? Tell me, remind yourself, right? Because the default in life is the erosion of the quality of our life. We're always going to go
wow.
back.
Oh, hold up. Okay, that's a good. I mean that you're going to be quote. That's. Say that again if you don't mind.
Yeah, the default in life is the erosion of the quality of our life.
Did you make that up, or did you hear that from somebody?
That's going to be somewhere between Tony
Robbins,
Robbins, Jim Rohn, all of the above.
Oh wow, because I've never heard it worded quite that way, but absolutely. And it sounds to people who don't have the desire to go for that 90th percent or that 95th percentile or whatever it is. It's sometimes, I don't know if you run into this, sometimes it feels irresponsible as an entrepreneur when people are saying, oh, but it's good enough. Are you not satisfied? Are you type A through the roof? It's like, no, I think there's more going on in life. And sometimes I'll have people, specifically with the topic of 4-day work week, which of course it could be any sort of, main concept is enjoy your life and make time for it.
Yeah.
I'll have people, I remember one friend who is a little bit younger than I am, married, but does not have kids. And she said to me, she said, Wade, she's honest, she's very deep, multidimensional person. She said, Wade, I don't understand why I wouldn't just work 6 to 7 days a week. I like my work and I kind of balance it out. And I said to her two things. I said, first of all, she's a person that believes in God. I happen to believe there's a God, whether it is or isn't, I can't prove it. But again, you and I discussed, it works for me. So I'm sticking with that one, and works for a couple other people. But anyway, so I said, well, first of all, I happen to think that God created this ridiculously awesome world, and there's more things going on than what I'm going to see inside my laptop. So I'd like to see what else is going on. And in order to do that, in my case, I need 3 days of I wouldn't call it detox because my work is not toxic, but I need to get into another place completely. This morning I woke up at 3 a.m. because I had, like, I have an idea. It's like a kid, like I've got to wake up. So I had an idea, and I've been up other than a half-hour stint since then. And at the same time, I couldn't keep that up if I kept going with that. I need to have some sort of thing that brings me back. And so I love what you said of just going back to, first of all, what brought you here? I mean, why did you first, what were you first looking for? And I think whether that, that might be even some of the best marriage advice. What were you looking for? And someone's been married 5, 10, 15, 20 years, say, well, she does this or he does this. Wait, what were you looking for? I was looking for a friend. I was looking for somebody to hang out with. I was looking for somebody to go dancing with. I was looking for somebody to talk to. Okay, why don't we let's start there. And let's maybe do that again, because that seemed to work, or by some definition. But I love the thing of the default being dangerous. And I think this is where, again, people sometimes say, well, you're dissatisfied. Well, no, if your life's not where you're, in my understanding, where you're just loving it, then something's missing. And then also, and this is in editorials, this is not you saying, this is Wade saying this, to me as a species, until everybody on the planet at least has food, clothing, water, shelter, security, me getting up, even if it's on a Saturday, like, okay, I've got this idea, it's about helping them, I'm going to get up and do it because that's some sort of calling, that's some sort of inner voice, whatever you want to call it, that, okay, maybe there's something I'm supposed to do it. And maybe it's not just that I'm supposed to Netflix and chill. And I love Netflix, but I'm not, and there can be a lot of stuff from that. So what do you do when that client comes up multiple times? How do you then look at perhaps, hey, maybe it's time to move on? And then going back a step, how does that show up in their business? Sorry to put that in a different order, like a Quentin Tarantino movie. How does that show up in their business when they're off? And then how then do you perhaps either bring them back to their business to then show them what it's costing them, or, and on the other side, how do you then know, well, nope, this person's just, they're committed to not progressing. They're committed to their default. They're too committed to it. I can't shift that.
Yeah. I'm big on permission, Wade. I'm big on asking permission. Like, are you willing to feel different? Do you want to feel different about this? If they say no, like, great, we're done. Call over today. That's it. I mean, that's back to the honesty again. Like, how do you want to feel right now? Like, where do you
It's
want
so
to be?
un-American.
Well, I mean, think about it, right? We take ourselves wherever we go. And so we even if someone's coming on, like they're working on their business, like they've got a great business and they're looking to take to the next level. They've got a whole bunch of they're doing a huge lift thing, so they're doubling the amount of people that are working with them and all this stuff going on. I really want to push through it. It's more often than not we'll end up working on their fitness or working on their relationship, or working on like how they feel about stuff, because you take yourself wherever you go. And it's whatever resists persists. And if you're pushing so hard in your business and your business is an 8 out of 10, and you're like, I want to get through, I want to get to a 9 or a 10, it's you can still keep pushing about that and you get more and more resistance. Or you could look at other parts of your life and go, okay, well, I need to focus a little bit more on my health, and then I'll have a bit more energy, and then that part will be easy, right? And it's the things that you can't see by yourself.
Yeah, that's one of the wisest things I think that one of the most common things that most people still don't get, because it's been in life coaching. Most of us, if you've got a life coach, here are 10 different areas. They're not always the same, usually about 6 or 7 are the same: your money, your finances, your life, your relationship, your health. And we kind of overlook it. But again, it's that thing of if you're a champion swimmer and your leg strength is in the 99th percentile or the 90th percentile, let's say,
yeah,
but your arm strength is at the 50th percentile, how are you going to become a better swimmer? Is it going to be by working more and more on what's already at 90%? And I think that's something that a lot of people forget, the basics. And like you said, I've seen so many people, and I'm watching you and actually, I don't know you. I know I'm in this space. We're talking about A-listers, B-listers, G-listers. I'm a G-lister. And I'm watching friends of mine that I've been around for years. Some are becoming A-listers, some are going from C-listers to B, and I'm watching them, and some of them that are so intent on not losing touch with the pulse of their clients. They're not, and yet their business is expanding. There's more people that want to talk to them. So it's that whole thing. Okay, they're being successful by a lot of numbers, not just number of sales.
Yeah,
they're good people, but I'm watching some of them, and it almost seems unfair, but it's how the way leverage, in my understanding, or scale works. Remember Bill Gates, in an interview I saw, or an article he wrote, he just mentioned, scale just multiplies whatever it is. If you've got really bad things going on in your systems, well, that's going to, when people say, I want to buy more real estate. Okay, tell me about that. I'm horrible at real estate. Okay, no, then don't buy more real estate. It's a bad idea.
Yeah.
And I just see people at times that we're still so enamored with our technology, or I can reach all these people. And I know somebody, I want to reach 4 million people. It's on my website. And as I've been doing this more, I'm like, okay, well, wait, why 4 million? That's like a very, 4,444,444 people. It's so ego-based of this desire. Then the intention is good. I want to help people work a 4-day work week. And the 4 is ridiculously obsessive in it. But in all of that, at times I just get reminded, okay, there's a great intention behind that. But somewhere in there, where's that quality definition of, so long as I can still maintain that connection, so long as I can still be present? And that's why when sometimes people will say to me, well, Wade, how come you're not obsessed with making 8 figures or 7 figures or multiples of what you're making? Because I really try to have a lot of humility around this. And I think you have this. You have the true type. I actually talk about my humility, which again, isn't really, I guess there's something missing to that when you talk about it. But this sense that, I don't know, stuff's working pretty well. And I guess it's that guy thing of, well, if it's working pretty well, I don't want to mess with it too much. I mean, add me a 0 and sure, I'll take it. But the time, the energy to make it happen at a certain quality level. And that's what I think when I talk to people that speak about a lot of topics that you're talking about, it seems to me that quality is very important to you. How does that factor into your decisions of what you pursue and in business, your journey and what you've been doing, and how does that help your clients you being in tune with that and being in touch with that and having a perspective of having lived in different parts of the world. How does that help the people you work with?
Yeah, the different perspective of being in different parts of the world. I find, I think the environment is probably the biggest indicator of sustainable change. You put yourself in a different environment, you can't help if everything else around you is. That's why it's the best way to learn a language is to be immersed in it. If you go to Italy, you're going to learn to speak Italian pretty quick. Right? And so when you're in a different country, everything's a bit different or a lot different, depending on how far away it is from your original culture. You can't help but get in different perspectives. The story I always tell about the Philippines is that, there is national language is English. Everyone can speak English, but no one wants to speak English. They tend to speak English when English people are around, like me, and most of the time not. And that was interesting as well. And one of the things that really stuck out for me was that the literal translation for the word yes means I hear you, right? And so rather than an acknowledgement, I would expect culturally that if you ask someone to do something and they say yes, it means a compliance that they're going to follow through and do that. It doesn't mean the same to them. And I'm stereotyping, obviously, but
Right.
the point is that you don't quite know. And so if someone says yes, and they mean, I can hear the words coming out of your mouth, I have not made any sort of commitment to what that is. So doing that, it's a completely different place. And so that being clear about that environment overall, being clear about what that commitment is, being clear about that communication is so important to set that foundation in the first place. So that's why I think, and I've gone off a tangent, but that's why I think about, that's why that's so important, that different perspective. Because as you start to then play that into your business or play that into your life, you've got to be aware of those things. So it starts with that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So now, whenever I get into a really good discussion that sometimes goes a couple directions, then I like to come back and ask very specific, actionable stuff. And I find usually different people have different either one thoughts or one-liners about what really makes the biggest impact. So I'm going to give you 4 quick questions, if that's cool. First one, if a person says to you, what's the best way for me to make an impact in other people's lives in my business? What's the best way to increase that impact? I'm currently doing X, whatever X is. How do I, as quickly as possible, make a jump in that in a way that's real and meaningful?
You've got to check in first of all. Like what's the thing that gives you the most passion? What's the thing that keeps you up late? What's the thing that gets you up early? What's the thing that drives the economic engine and that you're really good at? Like the overlap between those things, purpose, passion, and profit, that intersection is the money, literally, in all different parts. So that, knowing what that is, just very simply get it out there. Okay, what's the things that you're passionate about? What are the things that you're good at? People that tell you that, okay, how do you know, like things that, the way to know this is the things that you do that are really easy for you, that people go, oh, wasn't that's good. And you just go, what? That was easy. They're the things, those things. So passion, purpose, and where those overlap is where your profit's going to be. Do that exercise, get it out, put it on paper. If it's not on paper, it doesn't exist.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Then
I might ask you for a little something. We'll work on some to add to the show notes on that. But yeah, and I've heard people say that, and sometimes people say, well, I have purpose and passion, but it won't make me any money. Well, great. That's a really good hobby. And that's awesome. And that might be, there's books I've written on spirituality. I love doing them. And I do those on my Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the most part. In other words, I have plenty of energy then. I don't just vegetate for 3 days. I like to for me, it's a very almost Batman and Bruce Wayne thing. When I'm into making money, I'm going to make you money. I'm going to charge you. Yeah. And all of a sudden when I'm saving the money, I'm like, I don't want to have to, everything's free. It's all free because it's my gift to you. It's just kind of this, it borders on a little bit almost bipolar, but it allows me to explore those areas. But I've certainly come to terms with, at least for me, there's certain things I really love doing that nobody wants to pay me to do. And there's a couple of things that I do really well. My software business for 20 years has paid the majority of my bills, never intended to start it. I have a geek-like passion for it at times. I hate the tech support part. So at times I've had teams and I've done it individually and different stuff, but my North Star has been the 4-day work week / time with my family. My kids are 14 and 11. So that's been easy. Whenever something comes up, time with my wife, my kids, it becomes that North Star. Awesome. So you actually even hit on purpose, profit, and passion. Same thing for the making more money as quickly and making a big impact on the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. Pull this all together, because it's not always, to your point, it's not always going to make you profit, right? For me, when I first started thinking about coaching, it was like, well, I love health. I love everything to do with health. Let's do health coaching. And I realized that didn't drive the profit part of it necessarily. You can make some money for that, but not really. It's more of a passion. But just, there's going to be stuff there, like, and you can see the spark for it, and then pull the lever back to your scale point, right? Whatever you scale, you're gonna amplify.
Awesome. Thank you. Time. What do you find a lot of times when people are looking to this whole work less, make more paradigm? You told me you're a fan of 4-hour work week. So I imagine you kind of get a lot of this. A lot of people have a hard time with it because it sounds like you're moving away from something, like you're running from something. And then some people understand, oh, okay, it's about focusing on, what really actually moves the needle or does stuff. What do you tell your clients when they say, well, gosh, I don't have time. I don't have time to show up for your session today. How do you help them? Or what are what's a real simple thing that you think people could put into action quickly that can help them with that?
Yeah. How does that help you? It's a nice story. How does that serve you?
I love story work. Story work is so awesome. In fact, I meant to ask you this earlier. Quick thing. There's so many story coaches out there now and people talking about your story. And to now it's become kind of like the 3rd or 5th year of reality television. Like the first 2 years were a hot mess just because they threw some interesting people together and it just did its own thing. And now people are kind of getting intentionals. And I see that then people who see it, they're like, oh, you mean, so I practice? Like, no. You're actual, because there's almost the marketing. I'm telling my story so you understand. So you're like me and I'm like you, buy my stuff. There's that story. And there's, oh, no. What are you making this mean? Maybe elaborate on that just a little bit. I know we're coming towards the end of the interview, but because I think you and I understand that distinction there, and maybe some of the audience doesn't, because they've probably heard it a lot in the more marketing sense. Does your story serve you? How do you explain that to a very left-brained, stereotypical type person? What's the story? How do you explain that to them?
Yeah, stop making excuses. I mean, that story is just a soft way of saying excuses, and it's a better way of saying it to hold more rapport. But ultimately, we're talking about excuses. People do it all the time. We're always setting excuses. It's just that your narrative, the way that you decide that you do things.
I love that word, the narrative. It's like you've created this character. Well, create a different character. Create a character that can do that, and then be that person and be like that. Okay. And then last one, doing what you do best. We talked about purpose, profit, and passion. How do you know when you really do it well versus you think you do it well? Because I think we've occasionally run into people that think they do something really well. Like, no, my wife tells me I sound like a cat when I'm singing. I've got my earbuds in and I'm singing Def Leppard and it sounds awesome to me because I hear probably about 5% of it. Though I've heard the recordings after, it's not as flattering. How does a person know that? You mentioned asking people. Who should they ask, and how do they know that it's not just mom telling them or mom telling them, okay, well, you're my boy, you're a good kid. How do they know it's real?
Everyone knows, right? Back to honesty. Like, if you really truly believe that you're great at singing, okay, cool. Now go put it into practice. Like, how can you explain that to the outside world? Like, what's your goal here? Like, how do you prove that? Yeah. If you know deep down and believe it to be true, how does that attach to your outcome? How are you going to know for the external, right? It's like, am I going to land a singing contract? That's how I'll know. That's how I'll really know. That's how I'll know hundreds of thousands of people think that as well. And you know what? Again, nothing has any meaning except the meaning that you give it. And so if the story is that I am great at singing, and you want to do that, and you want to hold that story, fine. Does that give you fulfillment? If it does, great, good for you. You're probably doing better than most people, right? If that's the fulfillment, right? And
you might just have to settle for the audience in the shower as being the audience that really appreciates your singing as opposed to everybody else. All right, awesome. So this happens sometimes. So those of you all listening or watching, this is not some neatly wrapped up trilogy that's been planning to we could go on for hours, and the reality of practicality comes in. One of the things I'm going to suggest we put in the notes is the link to the mind scan, and again, and I'm going to connect with you at some point after about that. There's, one of the things I asked you about, what do you enjoy most or not enjoy most? What do you find is so important, and what was the key of that assessment? You said the word awareness, and that awareness is a whole different conversation, because then you can get into Buddhist awareness and Krishnamurti and all these different topics and it's something that we're not as familiar with, and you and I can talk about that more, but I just suggest to people, check out the mind scan that he has. That, again, you're going to see the link either in the show notes if you're listening to this on the podcast, or in the video, on the blog post, or the YouTube notes, whatever it might be. There is something to be said about having an assessment that's been based off of lots of people, give you feedback, not so it pigeonholes you. That's not the thing. A lot of people say, well, you're labeling me. Well, I'm 6'3". If you can call me tall or short, I mean, there are certain things available to me. Being a jockey for a horse, probably not a good idea. So there's certain things that help. But I just, gosh, like I said, sometimes I don't know where to close, because we could go on forever. Thank you for coming out. What other last thoughts would you like to share? And then where can people connect with you to learn more about your stuff? Again, of course, we'll put the notes in there, but what would you be passionate about telling people that where they can connect with you, and even just your take on, I read your bio, your take on what it is that you do and how you help people.
Thank you very much, Wade. A real pleasure. I'd love to do this again. I'd love to continue the conversation. I think we could get deep and talk for a long time. I'm sure. I think we can help a lot of people by doing that as well, honestly. And I think it comes down to the concept of the 4-day work week. Overall, it's about moving towards the life on your terms. That's what it is. What is it that you really want? How can you define that life on your terms? Because it's all possible. And so that's what I get passionate about, because I know it's true. I love to talk to people about it, just explore it. Look, everyone has choice. Like, be whoever you want. There's no judgment. It's just to go do that thing and just take a little step. The mind scan's cool because it just gives you a different perspective. From that, I think that's where we have to start. We have to be honest about where we are. So it hurts sometimes, right? If you want to lose a bunch of weight, you might say, I'm a little bit overweight. I'm a bit big boned. I'm a bit soft. I want to feel better. Just be clear. Just say you're fat. Just say it like you don't feel good, right? Because it just gives you use that pain to drive yourself forward. It's okay. It's all right. Like, people will appreciate that stuff. It's fine. And I'd love to talk to everyone to talk about it. The mind scan's great. You might not want to dive straight into it. It's available complimentary, certainly to your viewers and listeners. But I'd love to just have a chat with anyone who wants to, because I get super passionate about anything around personal development overall. Because I believe, like, and I definitely could talk all day, but to close this up, like, I was at a point in my life where I didn't believe I was that sort of person that would get passionate about finding their purpose. Blah, 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 blah. Right. And so that never really resonated with me. Finding a purpose is kind of like that old saying, got to find a needle in a haystack. I'm like, gosh, at least with that, you know what you're looking for. And so rather than thinking about finding your purpose, what resonates more with me is creating your purpose, or just creating the person that you want to be. Because if you've got a creation, something you can create, it's in your control. You can do it. You can take steps towards it. One step, one foot in front of the other. It doesn't have to be this huge, big thing. Oftentimes, if we think about switching careers or starting a new business, we think about today and then the end point of being there. And that feels huge. There's so many points in between. What you can do is take a step. But come see me at proadvisorcoach.com, or even you can just email me, nick@proadvisorcoach.com. I'll have to have a conversation with everyone who wants to, or take the mind scan. It's fun.
Awesome. Yeah. He's not literally going to scan your mind. It's an assessment. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming out, and everybody, I do my best to stay on topic and then bring people like Nick that can bring something deeper to this. And I'm very grateful for you coming out today. So everyone, check out what he's up to. Definitely do the mind scan, and just also something, and I really do my best to do this, and I'll close with this thought. A lot of times people don't take advantage of the free session, the free assessment. It's like, oh gosh, now I'm going to feel obligated. I can tell you, first of all, if you ever do a free thing with me, I gave it to you because it's a gift. It's not a strings attached thing. So you can feel free to take it and say, that's all I wanted. I'm good. And the people I bring on, as best as I can, pass that filter for me that, yes, they really want you to do this. So as I sometimes tell people, look, I'd rather have 1 billion people take all of my free stuff, especially if it's stuff that's scalable or can be done with technology, and have 100 people use it. And at least the rest of the billion know what I do. Then only 5 people use it because they're concerned. So definitely check out what he's up to. And as always, look forward to helping everybody on here to really, and I'm going to mess with my tagline here because I'm trying to update it, make it a little better, to create more impact and more money in less time. Do what you do best so you can better enjoy your family, your friends, and your life. Thanks again for coming out today, Nick, and look forward to talking with you on the next podcast. Otherwise, do what makes you happy, find your thing, and I can't seem to close this, so have a good one.
Pleasure.